You're watching Sun TV, broadcasting to the world from studios in Providenciales, in the beautiful binational Turks and Caicos Islands. Sun TV, your source for real news as it happens.
The Turks and Caicos Islands receives close to $300,000 from the U.S. government for working with the FBI. An American diplomat says TCI does not have the numbers to justify having an office here to issue visas, and crime in the Turks and Caicos Islands continues to be a concern to U.S. officials. I'm Tadleen Dafferlin, and thanks for watching this edition of Sun TV News. The Turks and Caicos Islands Treasury received a much-needed boost on Tuesday, February 18th, when officials from the United States government handed over a check for $279,620 to Governor Peter Buckingham. The funds were from money that was seized in a securities fraud case conducted by the New York Division of the FBI in conjunction with the Royal Turks and Caicos Islands Police Force, and a case that dates back to 2001. The case involved an individual called Sammy Galasso, who was part of an organized crime ring in New York and who, just after the bombing of the World Trade Center bombings in 2001, claimed that he created a device that could kill anthrax, a deadly substance that was being sent around in the mail. Galasso, who pled guilty and was sentenced to a term of 30 months behind bars, was able to scam several persons who invested in the company, and some of his dirty money was stashed away in a bank account in the Turks and Caicos Islands. FBI Special Agent Robert Shellhorn was among the officials who attended the check presentation at the U.S. Consular Office in Grace Bay. In this clip, he gave some background to the case.
Prior to 2001, the tragedies of 9/11, it was a stock fraud case, a money laundering case of Saverio Galasso, who was a Colombo associate attached to one of the organized crime families in New York. Mr. Galasso was out on bail at the time. He had been arrested 2 times prior to 9/11. And then once 9/11 had taken place, Mr. Galasso and company had used that time to basically further his interest in making more money via stock fraud. So at that time, he had had a boiler room operation that was fully functioning, and the only thing he needed at that point was a new, something new and jazzy to entice parties to invest their money. And shortly after 9/11, we had to deal with the anthrax mailings. At that time, Mr. Galasso felt like we could seize the moment and use this new exciting news to further our gain. So what he and company did was lock down a company that had a device that they alleged killed anthrax. It was now a penny stock, but by the time that they got a hold of the stock, they pumped it out to the unsuspecting buyer. When the unsuspecting buyer had purchased the stock, it created volume. Volume drove up the stock, so it went from a penny stock to a $14 share stock. What the unsuspecting buyer didn't know was that Galasso and company at one point were going to pull a pin on it, therefore creating a crash in the stock. So Galasso and company profited from the stock. The unsuspecting buyer lost in the purchase of their stock. At that point, when we arrested Mr. Galasso again, he chose to cooperate. Now, one of the major pieces that forced his hand to cooperate was the money that he had stored down here, down in the Turks and Caicos Islands. My office, in conjunction with Inspector David Thompson at that time, had worked hand in hand along with the United States Attorney's Office to lock down that money, put an order detaining that money to stay in the account so he could not have any access to the account. And that was all done at Mr. Thompson's level. He went before the court and locked down the money. Shortly thereafter, the money was then repatriated to the United States. And it has taken a number of years, but that's just the way that the system works. We needed to have what's called a final order of judgment in order to finally come to this day, which is the sharing of the proceeds, the illegal gains that were taken by Mr. Galasso and company between the two governments.
The FBI agent explained why the TCI was entitled to receive some of the money, which was just under $700,000.
We felt that as a material partner in this case, that they rightfully deserved a substantial portion of those proceeds. Again, we worked hand in hand with the Financial Crimes Unit of Turks and Caicos, and it was fairly often that we would speak. And it was right after 9/11, so it was a very tense period of time for everybody throughout the United States. And Galasso and company had seized that moment to better his own personal gain. And the Turks and Caicos government really, they played a material role in this, and they came forward. I want to say that Mr. Thompson may have reached out to us first to state that we think we have your defendants' money, some of your defendants' money down here in some of the islands, because the case had made headlines in the New York Times, and I believe Mr. Thompson had reached out to us, and that's when I had developed a relationship with Mr. Thompson and the Turks and Caicos government.
To further your question, I'll finish the question here. The answer, there's an agreement, a bilateral agreement with the United States, right, and the Turks and Caicos government that enables us to share the funds with you, right? And the funds are shared as a result of the work time that your detectives put in, right? It wasn't just a quick records check and you get 40% of the shares. The Department of Justice, the Office of International Affairs in the U.S. determined through the volume of work that the government, that the police department did, will determine the share.
John Dinkelman, U.S. Chargé d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy in Nassau, the Bahamas, was full of praise and thanks for the Turks and Caicos Islands and the part which it played in solving the crime.
The Turks and Caicos authorities confirmed the existence of proceeds in a local brokerage account stemming from fraud and obtained a court order to freeze those accounts for more than a year in consideration of pending court proceedings taking place in the United States, which were involving those very same assets. The Turks and Caicos authorities, in coordination with the United States authorities, then lifted their restraint on those accounts to enable a cooperating defendant to repatriate those assets to the United States for the purposes of the forfeiture. It was due to the assistance of the Turks and Caicos authorities that justice was able to be served. So on behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, indeed on behalf of the United States of America, I want to thank those who were involved in this case, which dates all the way back to 2001. The Turks and Caicos Islands continue to be a great partner to the United States, and it is only fitting that these funds be shared to strengthen efforts to both counter money laundering, terrorism finance, while supporting law enforcement and drug rehabilitation efforts in this beautiful country.
Commissioner of Police Colin Farquhar thanked the DEA, FBI, and U.S. Coast Guards for their assistance to the Turks and Caicos Islands Police Force. He explained where the funds will be going and what they will be used for.
I just wanted to take this moment to thank the U.S. in general, but specifically the FBI, the DEA, and the U.S. Coast Guard, who are our partners and we work with, almost on a daily basis, whether it's a ship that has gone missing or whether it's asking the FBI to assist us in video enhancement and the DEA with various ongoing operations. So without them, our job would be much more difficult. And so on behalf of the police force, I'd just like to thank you for your assistance on almost a daily basis. Well, under the Proceeds of Crime Ordinance, these funds will go directly into the National Forfeiture Fund. And the National Forfeiture Fund is to help mitigate against drug trafficking and money laundering are the two main things. And the money can be used for equipment. It can also be used for training and other things. And so anybody that's involved in trying to stop money laundering or drug trafficking can apply and to basically to TCIG to use those funds. The National Forfeiture Fund, at any time it's capped at $2 million. And so right now I believe there's $2 million in there.
Plus this, or?
This would be added to it. Yeah.
Governor Peter Buckingham, who accepted the check on behalf of the Turks and Caicos Islands, said the money received from the U.S. government was much appreciated and greatly needed.
The TCI budget remains difficult and remains tight, as everyone knows. So any support we can receive from others is much appreciated. So thank you very much indeed.
You're watching Sun TV, broadcasting to the world from studios in Providenciales, in the beautiful by nature Turks and Caicos Islands. Sun TV, your source for real news as it happens.
Residents of the Turks and Caicos Islands who want to secure a U.S. visa will still have to travel to Nassau in the Bahamas to get them for quite some time in the future. That's because the United States Embassy has no immediate plans of issuing U.S. visas here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Chargé d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy in the Bahamas, John Dinkelman, told reporters in Providenciales on Tuesday, February 18th, that the Turks and Caicos Islands does not have the numbers to justify establishing the service here, and it would be too costly to set up visa processing facilities here.
Well, first and foremost, the volume of visas which are given or issued to the people of the Turks and Caicos is certainly not enough to justify the considerable infrastructure investment that would be needed in order to legally and legitimately authorize issuances of visas here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. What we have done over the past 3 years since my arrival in this part of the world has been the establishment of this consular agency, which, while its primary focus is serving the needs of United States citizens who are visiting in, traveling through, or living in the Turks and Caicos Islands, is also a good point of reference for individuals from the Turks and Caicos who seek visa guidance. But for my part, and I think I feel safe to say this without correction by the consular experts here, we will not be issuing or interviewing for visas in the Turks and Caicos Islands anytime soon.
At the time of Tuesday's press conference, Brendan Brockovich, acting consular chief of the U.S. Embassy, did not have the exact number of persons from the Turks and Caicos Islands who applied for visas, but he said the figure was in the thousands. He also revealed that around 80% of the persons who applied for U.S. visas were successful.
There's 15,000 total last year for all of the Bahamas, most of which were for Bahamians. And the Turks and Caicos was a pretty small percentage of that. So the exact number I would have to get back to. We don't usually talk about specific denial percentages. I can tell you that about 80% of the people who apply at the U.S. Embassy in Nassau are given visas.
Meantime, Dinkelman explained why it is important for the United States to have a consular presence here.
All countries have embassies, consulates general, and consulates in different countries to serve various needs. The government of the United States has determined that there are various areas in the world that merit a presence in order to provide services, but yet places where we can't effectively have a diplomatic institution of some sort, such is the case here in Providenciales. The massive influx of American tourism here over the past 2 or 3 decades has been a mounting issue because, unfortunately, of the millions of people who do come here, some fall in harm's way. They get ill, they suffer accidents, whatever the case might be, there is a need. And it's virtually impossible to serve them to the need that they require from New Providence or from Port-au-Prince or Santo Domingo. It just can't be done because of the distance and because of the isolated nature of an archipelagic situation. And so for this reason, back in 2009, we started to work to find a location, an adequate location, which was centralized and accessible to the bulk of Americans who would be here, who might find themselves in harm's way and in need of assistance. We then needed to locate an individual who could actually staff this location as a consular agent. We were very happy to find Talisha Simmons, who is able to do this job brilliantly, and we are grateful for her unfailing dedication to the work involved here. Now, to answer your question, and as you'll see here on the door, this isn't a location where things are open from 9 to 5. This isn't something where you can say, oh, I think I'll pop in and I'll ask about what is necessary to get a student visa. However, and this is where the modern world is so great, especially for those younger than I, you get online. You can find the answers to the vast majority of questions you want about visas. However, sometimes, no matter what the issue is, you need to talk to someone face-to-face. So, in order to do that, you access the telephone numbers or the internet addresses that one finds on the email here on this door, and appointments can be made here to assist individuals in whatever questions they might have regarding all consular issues. Between you and me, the vast majority of these answers nowadays, and bothers me greatly as an older guy, is that it's probably at your fingertips online if you just take the time to do a Google search. But the reality is that people need help sometimes, and it's good to have a face, albeit behind a window.
The U.S. diplomat said the United States continues to be concerned about crime, not just in the Turks and Caicos Islands, but wherever there are Americans.
As long as there is an American citizen, we will always be concerned about any form of delinquency anywhere on this planet. That's why we're here, is to make sure that our citizens are safe. Crime anywhere, the Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas, the Caribbean in general, or the world at large, is the thing which we, particularly those who are dedicated to consular issues, will continuously focus on. We can't stop crime here any more than we can stop it in downtown Washington, D.C. Our job is to make sure that individuals can, first and foremost, deal with it, and that authorities, right, well-thinking authorities whom we support, have what they need to address crime issues. This is why what you're asking today is so appropriate for what we're doing. The Department of Justice, I'm sure, could have found a rationalization to say, well, no, we need this money in the United States. But that program is made so that cooperative, helpful organizations in foreign governments can get their fair share to address the issue in any way they can.
Well, that's our Sun TV News Brief for today. Join us again tomorrow when we bring you real news as it happens directly to your computer, mobile device, or smartphone. If you know anyone living overseas who would like to keep up with what is happening in the Turks and Caicos Islands, get them to email us at sun@suntci.com so we can add them to our mailing list to get Sun TV news. Thanks for watching. I'm Toddleen Dafferlin.